Hey, fourth grade, how are you guys doing? I hope you're doing well and staying safe. This week's lesson, we are going to talk about different kinds of environments: urban, suburban, and rural. You may have heard of these words, but this week we're going to go over the characteristics of each one to differentiate and distinguish between them. So without further ado, let's get started. The first type of environment we'll go over is an urban environment. An urban environment is a city with many people and many buildings where everything is close together. Here are some examples of a few of the most famous urban areas around the world. First, we have New York City in the United States, Paris, France, Lagos, Nigeria, Mexico City in Mexico, and Tokyo, Japan. The second type of environment is a suburban environment. A suburban environment is a town outside of a city with buildings and people spread out. And finally, the third and last type of environment is a rural environment. A rural environment is a town with mostly open land and a small population. Based off of the three definitions we just learned, what kind of environment is Philadelphia? I'll give you a few seconds to answer. To answer this question, let's go through the criteria of an urban setting. Is Philadelphia a city? Does it have many buildings? Does it have many people? And is everything close together? Well, yes, we do know that Philadelphia is a city. And Philadelphia does indeed have many buildings. We know that just by looking around. We also know that Philadelphia has many people. We also know that by looking around and walking around. And finally, yes, everything is close together. We have homes and people and buildings all close together. So that means Philadelphia is an urban environment, also known as the city of brotherly love. Alright, now let's move on to discussing what some of the common characteristics of each type of environment are, so that we know when to use which word. So let's start with an urban environment. Like we said before, it's a city with many people and buildings where everything is close together. Oftentimes, an urban area has a large population, meaning there are many people. Another common characteristic is the smaller homes. There's lots of small homes and apartments packed together in an urban area, like Philadelphia. Another common characteristic is that it's more diverse compared to other environments. And, of course, there's more public transportation, like buses, trains, subways, trolleys, you name it. And lastly, oftentimes, businesses will locate their main offices and headquarters in urban areas. This is why we see lots of big companies with their headquarters in the city. Next, let's go over the characteristics of a suburban environment. Remember, suburban means it's a town outside of a city with buildings and people all spread out. So, when you go to a suburban area, the first thing you might notice is that there are bigger houses and more nature. Oftentimes, there's much more space for each person or each family so that they can have a bigger house with more nature, such as trees and lawns. There's also, however, less public transportation in suburban areas. There might be buses and trains, but definitely not as many as there are in the city. And lastly, it's common to see manufacturing businesses in the suburban areas compared to headquarters. Manufacturing businesses often have factories that produce the products, such as cars or toys. And let's not forget the characteristics for our rural environment, a town with mostly open land and a small population. So, in a rural environment, like we said, there's a small population. Not too many people live in rural areas compared to the cities in urban areas. There's definitely a lot more nature, whether it be farmland or parks. Many national state parks are close to the rural areas. There's also lots of farming and agricultural businesses happening in the rural areas because they have lots of farmland. This means that it's easier to grow crops, vegetables, fruits, even livestock such as beef and chicken in rural areas. Rural areas also have a lot less public transportation, even compared to suburban areas. It's rare to find buses running and trains running and subways in a rural area. And lastly, just like suburban areas, rural areas are also a good place to have manufacturing businesses because of the surplus of land and space to spread out for factories to make production happen. An easy way to remember the 3 types of environments is by repeating these key words: urban, cities; suburban, outskirts; rural, farms. Hopefully, by repeating this, it'll help you remember the 3 types. So we already established that Philadelphia is an urban environment, but what characteristics exactly do we see in Philadelphia? Well, in urban settings, we mentioned that everything is close together, including housing. Look at these houses and apartment buildings. All the units and all the houses are compact, all close together like the row homes. They're connected to their neighbors. This is a common feature we see all throughout the city, but especially the busiest, like West Philly and Center City downtown. Next, urban areas have lots of options for public transportation. If you live in Philadelphia, you know exactly what SEPTA is. We can take buses, trains, even trolleys to travel around the city. Now, they might not always be on time, but having different options of modes of transportation is super helpful and convenient to travel around the city, whether you work somewhere on the other side of the city or you have friends or family living across the river. And finally, we have many big buildings and businesses in our city. If you look on the bottom right picture, these are some of the biggest companies and headquarters in Philadelphia. So things such as Pico, which is responsible for a lot of our electric, or Comcast, who's responsible for Wi-Fi. These are companies that have big offices and headquarters located in Philadelphia. 42% of all Philadelphia jobs are actually concentrated in downtown Philadelphia, making it the largest central business district in the region and the 9th largest in the whole entire country. However, that's not all that Philadelphia offers. Of course, Philly has lots of local small businesses all around. Take a look at the top picture. A block away from GLA Southwest are amazing local restaurants and businesses run and owned by people in West Philly. These local businesses and shops are usually what connects communities together, not the big corporations. Alright, before we move on to this week's project, let's go over our objective for the week and see if we achieved it. So first, can you distinguish between the 3 types of environments? Well, we went over the definitions and characteristics of each type, so this is something you should already be able to do by the end of watching this video. Now, what about researching a county for each type of environment in Pennsylvania? Well, we didn't do that in the video. This is what you're actually going to do for your project by the end of the week. This week's project is an urban, suburban, rural Google Earth research project. Now, I know some of you guys are at home getting excited because I just mentioned Google Earth, and I really hope you have fun with it. So, for this project, you will use a Pennsylvania county map that I provide you with to research one urban county and one rural county in Pennsylvania. You're going to use Google Earth on your iPad or laptop to gather information about the counties you pick and record everything on a research worksheet that'll be posted on Google Classroom. Then finally, at the end, you're going to have a writing prompt to answer. Here is what the research worksheets will look like. The first page has a little bit of information with the county map that you have to use. And on pages 2 and 3, that's where all your research information will be entered. Make sure to carefully read the directions, and if you're stuck and need some help, then log on to office hours where I can help you so you can do the best you can on this project. I really hope you enjoy this project and learn a lot about Pennsylvania.